Welcome to my tutorial for Track and Field for the NES. And there's a few ways you can beat this game. I play on player A mode. I'm not sure what the differences are, but this is the one that I beat, so I'm just going to give some instructions on what I did. Basically, the way you can beat the game is you can play through each event individually and just try to beat all the events that way, one by one. And if you fail the event completely, you can just play the event until you beat it and then go on to the next one. But for me, I felt like the best way to do it was, the most legit way to me was to beat it on 1cc without continuing or failing an event. So I just went down. I started from the first event, and the game will naturally progress. If you complete an event, it'll automatically take you to the next one. So I just beat the game that way instead of going through the list and doing them like individually. And if you do it that way, you pretty much you can fail an event as many times as you want if you do that. But to me, it was more legit to just go straight through. You do have 3 attempts on most of the events before you completely fail the event. So you have 3 chances to pass it. Now, there's 2 events where that's not the case, where you're running and just mashing the button. I think you have to win the race. And with the hurdles, it's a similar event. I think you have to win the race there. But aside from all that, the main controls are you're going to mash one of the buttons to run. I use a turbo controller for that, so that makes it a free game pretty much. So, hold the button down or mash it, and you just press back, which is the left direction. Just tap it to jump over the hurdle. And you're going to tap that left directional to do all your jumping in the game and to throw the javelin. The tutorial mainly helps with the controls because unless you have a manual, you're not going to know the controls. So, again, just run. Hold the button down to run or mash it, and when you get to that edge where there's a little line, that's where you just press back. Just tap it once, and you'll throw the javelin. Tap left one time. You'll throw the javelin, and it should be over the qualifying number that you need. See where it says qualify up at the top? That's always going to be the standard that you have to meet to complete an event, and that's for pretty much all the events. Aside from like the hurdles where you just have to win the race, I think, and the 100-meter dash or whatever it is, again, you just have to win, and that's just button mashing. The hurdles, you're button mashing, but you also have to tap left every time a hurdle comes up. You want to tap it a little bit before the hurdle shows up. Once you get the timing down, it's very easy to jump all the hurdles. So you may have to practice that. You don't really need save states in this game to practice the events, but it is a little faster if you're playing on an emulator. But you can go right in the menu and just select any event you want and practice it that way as well. So you don't need to use save states. You never really need to, but it's always gonna speed things up when you can use save states to practice. For this, you want to shoot these discs. It's almost like a rhythm game once you get it down. It's really it's a little awkward, but you want to wait until the red square is around the projectile that you're trying to shoot. And when it is, you press the fire button. And it's almost like a rhythm game, like I said. Once you shoot the first projectile, there's actually a rhythm and a timing to it, like a rhythm game, where you can just tap it and you can shoot out all the targets pretty much. Now, aside from just shooting the ones on the right side by tapping the fire button, you can actually shoot the ones on the left side too, which I didn't know initially. I figured it out by this point. But if you tap left, again, it's that left direction on the directional pad. You can fire your left square, basically. That's the left. You see that square on the left? You can hit the stuff that's going through that left square as well. So if you're paying enough attention, you can shoot things simultaneously, right and left at the same time, by using that left directional button, tapping that. Now for the long jump, I believe it already passed, but for that, you run up to the line and you just tap left once at the area where you're supposed to jump, where the line is, and you should make the jump. It's really, really simple once you understand. I mean, I don't even understand how to make better jumps and do all that shit, like the nuances, but I can tell you how to beat the game. And this is all I did to beat it. So I'm just relaying that. This is just straight up to beat the game. So for this, mash like usual to run, hit left once, hit left again, and now hit left again. And that's it. And when I say hit left, I'm talking about just tapping it really fast each time your feet touch the ground. And that's all you got to do. And now this can be difficult if you don't understand what the fuck is going on. I didn't really understand what was going on, but I figured out that this is just what worked. I still don't understand how you can adjust your angles and do shit like that, but I didn't really need to. I mean, I was able to jump most of the course by just doing that simple tapping method. So again, just mash the button to run or hold it down if you're like me using a turbo controller. Now, I was switching turbo on and off on my controller because you do not want turbo down on your controller for the archery event or for the shooting event. So for those two, I turned it off. But for everything else, I use turbo. So it does help. I consider it legit since for me, turbo is not like a cheat for me. You know what I mean? In my book, anyway. It can be kind of cheap for some of these games, but this game you actually still do have to play well. So for this one's really fucking awkward. You're going to press the fire button to adjust the wind initially, but once that gets locked in, it's going to be permanent. I don't know if that matters much, but the important thing here is you gotta press the fire button and release it when the angle says about 5. You see the angle up there next to the target? It said 5.56. Well, you want to get it to around 5. And you want to release the arrow as close to the bullseye as you can, but you also want the angle to stay 5. And the way you do that is you got to hold the button down for about a split second, because the longer you hold it down, the higher that angle number goes. So you want to hold down the fire button until it says about 5, which is about a split second. You'll start to get the timing down after a while, but you want it to say around 5. That seems to be the key. And that was how I hit the bullseye in one of my... I've hit the bullseye a few times. That was how I did it. It was at 5. So... it seems like angle 5 is the one to have to get the best results. And, of course, you're trying to release the arrow as close to that bullseye as possible, too. You want to wait till the target is about lining up with where your character is standing, obviously. And that's about it. I mean, like, you're not going to get it every time, probably, unless you really understand what's going on. But you should be able to score pretty well with those tips by trying to keep your angle around 5. Try not to go up beyond that, because then you start shooting off at weird, way off target, I noticed. So... try to get your angle around 5. And at first, I was just tapping the button trying to shoot the arrow regularly. I didn't realize that you have to hold the button down for an extremely brief amount of time. And you want to go for angle 5. So, you want to try to do that on every shot and get as close to the bullseye as possible. And with that in mind, you should be able to score enough to qualify. You see, I barely did it here. It was on my 3rd attempt that I finally broke through. But that was the idea I was going with. And like I said, practice these events separately in the menu or practice them with save states until you feel pretty comfortable that you can qualify in them. Because you don't get any continues when you want to run through the game straight. You got to do it on 1cc. So there is no ending or anything. That's why it's debatable what's considered beating this game. It's one of those rules that you have to kind of make yourself as far as beating games goes. It's more of an arcade game, an old-style arcade game. So it doesn't have an ending or anything, and it just loops. For me, completing the first loop without continuing, I consider that about the best you can do as far as beating the game, So for this one is tricky. For this, what you have to do is you want to run all the way to the edge where that bar is, and then just as you get to the edge, press back or left on your directional pad. Press it once, and then press right on your directional pad. What this does is adjust your mid-air positioning so you can get your legs over the bar. It's very awkward. It's easy to do once you do it a few times. So again, run to the end, hit left here, and then hit right again. Tap right again to adjust your body to get over the bar. And it's just taps. Tap left, tap right. That's all it really is. You don't have to hold it or anything, from what I remember when I did it. So keep that in mind and just practice that, because that one can make you fail. That's the last event, so you can easily fail the whole thing from that alone. So make sure you have it down. So now I'm on the second loop. And again, for this one, if I didn't mention it, this is just mashing the button. Mash a single button. Don't alternate between B and A. Just mash a single button. You'll know what button it is because it'll make your character run. So mash a single button. And if you're using turbo, it's an instant win. Your turbo controller should just win this by holding down the button with turbo on. You also can't start the race until there's like 3 things that light up on the top. You got to wait for those to go through. It's like 3 beeps or something. You don't want to start it earlier, you get penalized for that. But aside from that, so this is the long jump. This is the same type of thing. You just run like usual to the line. When you get to the line, you want to jump a little bit before the line by just tapping back, which is left. So just tap left on the directional pad. Just one little tap, a real fast tap, and that'll be good enough to get across. Now that was a foul because I went a little too late, But you get the idea. You want to do it a little bit earlier than the line. You don't want to like try to push it too far because then you'll easily go over. But I mean, that's all I did to win, and that's what I did on the first loop as well. So here I wasn't really that concerned because I was just going for a single loop just to beat the game. That's what I consider beating the game. Now, initially, I beat the game through the menu by doing the events individually, and I would just do each one until I beat it, and then I wouldn't do it again. And that is another way you could consider the game beaten, depending on how you want to classify it. If you like making a game's beaten list, then you can kind of have your own rules for how you consider these types of games being beaten. But for me, I wasn't really happy with that since it wasn't really clear. I wanted to just kind of solidify it, so I went and did it all in one CC. I found that to be a lot easier to justify. So it took me around 55 minutes to beat that way. I did have to look up some of the controls in effect because some stuff I didn't even realize that pressing back was to jump and all that shit. I was trying to press A. But pretty much, left is going to be what does most of the shit, like throwing the javelin. You tap left for that. It's pretty much for all the jumping you do in the game and throwing the javelin. So it's kind of awkward. You would think that you would hit A or some shit to jump. But if you don't know that, it can be confusing as to what's going on in the events. For a while, I didn't really, I wasn't sure how I was beating them. And for that high jump, you pretty much have to know that, because if you don't, you have no idea what the fuck is going on. The controls are very confusing for that final event. But it's just as simple as pressing back to jump like usual, but then you're going to add in pressing right while you're airborne to kind of adjust your feet over the bar. That's the only difference with that. And again, this is more like a rhythm game, like I said. See, I was getting into a good rhythm on this particular one, but I think I fucked it up. I didn't end up doing too well, but you can see in the first playthrough that I got in a decent rhythm. And it's really kind of like a rhythm. Like, once you shoot that first disc, it's like a timing game. You just have to know the timing of when the next disc will pop. So you just, you memorize when to press the buttons. It really is kind of like a rhythm type of game once you get that first shot in. The ones on the left take a little extra coordination because you're trying to focus on shooting the ones on the right. But if you can shoot the ones on the left, you have a better chance of getting a score. Now, for the first loop, you don't really need to shoot the ones on the left at all. When I originally beat it, I didn't even know I could do that. And I was able to qualify. But now, after each loop you do, I think the game loops several times where the qualifications get harder and harder to meet. So the numbers will go up that you need to qualify in each event with each loop. But then at some point, I think it just stops. So if you really want to be, I think you could try beating the game 5 or 10 loops on 1cc if you really want to consider it. If you have a real strict kind of rule set for beating these kind of games, then you could try to do it until the qualifying score doesn't go up anymore. I think it's 5 or 10 full loops from what I read. So there is that. But yeah, hopefully that helps, because most people playing this aren't going to have an instruction manual. They're probably going to be playing on an emulator like I was. So it's kind of a pain in the ass to look everything up. So this should simplify everything. Let me know if you have any questions, and thanks for watching.